The world is a scary place. I would be like watching news clips of like the Yugoslavian war. I became obsessed with it.
What drew you to Thailand to become a monk?
I actually became a monk not to hide or run away from the world, but to better understand it.
Were you able to find like peace and calm in that environment?
Everybody who goes to the White House, they get disappointed.
Namaste Kankap, Monk Kevin.
Satu Sam, it's good to be here and thank you for having me.
It's great. It's great. I'm glad we finally got together to do this. When we first met, I was super impressed by your intellect, your devotion, your journey here. What should we talk about first? We could talk about abortion, immigration, transgender policy.
So pretty much all the fun stuff. All the stuff that will get me in trouble.
We won't touch that stuff. Well, seriously, very, very cool to be sitting here with you. Congratulations on your journey and your ordination as a monk. You've now been living as a monk for almost 2 months.
Yeah, about.
Including an intensive 1 month at iMonastery in their monk life training program. And then you've continued on. So I believe almost 2 months now you've been living in a tent as well.
Yeah, one small, tiny little tent.
Yeah, but you're looking good. How are you feeling?
No, yeah, I feel great. You know, I think the best thing about this is the overall feeling of peace and sabai. So in monk life, we call it the word sabai, which is just like peace and like calmness and just settling into your inner core. So I'm always feeling sabai. And in my lay life, it was really hard to get that feeling. But when I did the ordination and I did monk life, I just this constant state of sabai-ness, and it's really, really nice.
Beautiful. Love to hear that. And I think, you know, so much interesting stuff to talk about. When I saw like your background, I'm like, wow, I can't wait to talk to this guy. And I think in this episode, we will talk about, of course, your journey, to how you got here to ordination, you know, your background in.
When you see my background, you're probably like, how did this guy become a monk?
Yeah. No, actually, I knew it exactly, because once you realized, I was like, well, why are there not more people from Washington being like, you need to find some mindfulness in this world. But yeah, we'll talk about your journey to being a monk, your experience as a monk, some of the takeaways and insights that you've learned, as well as, you know, some of the future vision. And, you know, what actually got you involved in policy making and governance to begin with. So maybe we'll start there. You can take us back, like what before your interest in Buddhism and your ordination, what got you interested in governance and policy making, and eventually, you know, go into Washington?
Governance, policy, national security, just throw it all in politics.
Yeah. What got you in
Because
there?
I did a little bit of everything, right? So I think for me, I've always been interested in this stuff as early as I can remember. I think probably part of it had to do with the fact that how my parents, they came to America and how they kind of like grew up in the world. They're from West Africa. And so during the time when they were growing up in the 60s and 70s, the whole continent was going through this massive wave of decolonization, like getting autonomy and independence from many European powers like Britain, France, you know, Netherlands, you know, just all the European powers who carved up Africa in the 1800s. And so during this wave of decolonization, after the independence was received, you know, naturally civil conflict kind of arose because people fought for power, they fought for control, they fought for dominance. And so my parents, they were the result of that. So at an early age, they were in war zones, in conflicts, civil wars, stuff like that. So they were refugees. And that was kind of how they came to America. And so because of that, they would always tell me these stories about what it was like back then and how difficult things were. So from a very, very early age, I kind of had that in the back of my mind, like, okay, well, even though America is nice, it's safe, we don't have like that civil war or that civil conflict, at least not in the way that you would find in other countries. I kind of had it in the back of my mind that was the reality for many people out there. And so naturally, I just remember at a very, very early age, some of my earliest memories were just wanting to like end people's pain and make sure that people don't go through those types of stories that I heard from my parents and just types of stuff I would see on TV. I remember I became obsessed with it. Like I remember at a very early age, 4 years old, I would be like watching news clips of like the Yugoslavian wars.
Wow.
And like the whole country like broke up into 6 different republics, and you know, with the Serbs and the Croats and, you know, and the Bosniaks and the Bosnians, and it was just like, and I was just glued to it and just thinking to myself, man, those people they're going through so much. I just wish that there was something I can do to make sure so that their lives could be better. I didn't have the language for it, but now that I reflect back, it's almost like I wanted to end their suffering, which is like a very, very brief concept. But at the time, I was 4 years old, so I don't think like that,
Yeah.
And so kind of going forward, growing up in that kind of a family, that very politically oriented lawyer family, I eventually just went to college, studied political science and biology, but that's one other conversation we don't have to talk about. Yeah, and so then I just get involved in politics and moved to DC, got a job working in Congress for the Congressional Black Caucus, and so yeah.
Okay, wow, that's quite a journey, and so many parallels to where you are now that I can see the seeds starting to mature, and that's your entry into politics. And then I believe you were working for the Biden administration. Can you tell us like what your roles were and how did that become part of your journey?
So for the Biden administration, I was working in the Pentagon specifically. So I was one of President Biden and Vice President Harris's appointees in the Pentagon. And so the the office I was in had policy. So how do I explain? So we determined and we wrote policy for many parts of continents that we have in the world. So for example, for Europe, for Latin America, for the Middle East, for Africa, and for Russia, Ukraine. A lot of times we called it like the crisis zones because those are all the places in the world where there's always like some kind of perpetual crisis. In Africa, it's always some kind of coup, some kind of like civil conflict. In Europe, you have the recent, Russia, invading Ukraine. Then Middle East, like Israel, Gaza, so just like a nonstop like crisis mode. And so I was in that office, managing the policies for like the different regions. And so sometimes I would go to an individual office. I would do like NATO, Europe policy, Middle East policy, Africa policy.
Wow.
And so it just depends on whatever they needed me at the moment. I would kind of go there and just become a role player to support the team and to try and like make sure that we give the secretary and the president and the administration the best possible policy guidance that we could.
Yeah, and where's like your home base during that time? Were you in and around the White House? Where were like your meetings taking place?
Okay, fair enough. Yeah. No, great question. So my home base was in the Pentagon, but oftentimes we would go to the White House for meetings. Like we had meetings with the White House on a weekly, sometimes even on like a daily basis. So it was like constantly interacting with them, going to the National Security Councils, engaging with, we call it like interagency partners. So like from State Department, from the National Security Council, Pentagon, and so that was. But my physical office was in the Pentagon.
Have you ever been on Air Force One?
So it's kind of hard to explain. So what I tell people is there are many different types of planes that could be classified as Air Force One, I believe. And so the one that the most popular known one is the one for the president, which is like, hail to the chief, but like he walks up the steps and that kind of stuff. The one I was on was one for the Secretary of Defense. And so that was actually known as the Doomsday plane. And that was a plane that offered continuity of like our command and control. So like in the event of a nuclear war, that plane would be the one to decide like dropping the nuclear bomb on countries. So it was the Doomsday plane.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. We could record so much more on that. But we're just like, so where was you've been in some amazing places that most people never have the opportunity to visit. The White House, Pentagon, Air Force One,
State Department, Congress.
Where was like, where was your favorite place to visit? Or where was the most impressionable place? Or
you mean visit within the US or?
Yeah, I would say like any of these remarkable places that are like high-ranking politics or limited access. Where was like a cool place that you enjoyed hanging out, spending time?
So I really, that's a good question. I think I don't think I had a particular place I really enjoyed hanging out, spending time. I think anytime I would go to any of these places where I worked or where I would have to go into work, I just always felt humbled because if you really think about it, there are so many great people who came before me who work in these places, whether it's State Department or whether it's like the White House or the Pentagon. And so the fact, or even Congress, especially Congress, right? You go into the halls of Congress, there's all this history, there's all these beautiful paintings, there's all these statues, you get a sense of is greater than you. It's
Right.
not just you, it's the country, it's the people, it's our documents like the Constitution, the Declaration of Independence. So
Wow.
it's like you're feeding into all that history that had made our country what it is.
Wow, beautiful.
So
Beautiful.
maybe to answer your question simply, I really liked going to the Capitol building at the Congress.
Okay.
The White House, to be honest, like people get surprised, but it's really underwhelming. It's not really. Go to any European palace, it's nicer.
Oh,
It's nicer, it's better, it's bigger. But 'cause everybody who goes to the White House, they get disappointed because
Yeah.
it's like this small little building, and there's only like a few bedrooms that you can see, and the Oval Office is like not it's small too, and it's not that. It's not that
The
impressive.
new
but...
the new Fed building sounds like it's going to be pretty nice.
Oh, yeah. So actually, when the current president, President Trump, when he talked about that, I think a lot of people who would be on my so-called side, I don't know, like who would be like on that side of the political aisle, I think they would get upset. But not that I think it's a great thing that he's doing that, but I kind of understand it in a way, because you go to any other Capitol building in any other country, it's like the beautiful giant like building, and everything is like grand, and it's like massive, and it's gold and it's purple, and like all these beautiful tapestries, but the White House is just like eh. But I think it's kind of nice because I think it kind of reflects like who at least I think who we are as people in a way, because it's almost like the American people, like we're all created equal under God, right? We're all created equal under the law. So even if you're the president, you're not gonna get like this massive grand structure.
Yeah.
Like you're gonna get something that's pretty like humbling, or that's that's not like overly opulent, right? So that's I kind of like that image that it projects. Like even the president has to like kind of
Yeah.
kind of
Keep it the mainstream.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Main Street.
Yeah, so I kind of like that image.
Yeah, I like it. Well, a lot of people, including myself, feel that politics would be super chaotic, stressful, like just yanking the strings of your emotional cord all day long. Were you able to find like peace and calm in that environment at that point in your life?
No. Okay, let me be fair. It wasn't. Maybe I could find episodes and moments where it was peaceful, but overall, because the environment itself is not peaceful, right?
Yeah.
So I think it's really important that the people who work in those places do what they can to make that environment peaceful. Like, for example, to put you into some kind of context, every day, most of the times, there's always some crisis happening. There's always some fast decision that had to be made, and you were in like the center of it all. So imagine like, I don't know if you've seen like the TV shows where you have like all the command and control, like monitored,
yeah.
and people are running around in straight cheese and doing all this crazy stuff. It wasn't like that level, but it was pretty chaotic, because a lot of times the president or the secretary, they would need like stuff right this moment to make decisions. Sometimes it would be like within minutes they would have to make a decision, and so they relied on us to give them that information so they could make the best possible decision in that moment. And so that was a lot of times, but I still think that you make the best decisions when you're the most peaceful, you're the most calm, and then when you focus the most inward.
Yeah.
And so I remember like there are some times where it'd be crazy crisis, it'd be some kind of like internal drama or external drama. And what I would do a lot of times is I would just go to the bathroom for 5 minutes. I would sit on the bathroom floor like this, cross-legged, and just meditate and just calm myself.
Wow.
Yeah, because I knew like I wouldn't make the best. Because I don't want to make decisions based off of fear, ego, or insecurity. I wanted to make sure, because these are important decisions that are being made, important actions that are being taken. So I just wanted to make sure that I did that in my most centered and peaceful place possible. But sometimes it worked out. A lot of times I failed, but I tried, right?
So having been in the political system for a while now, is there a structural reason why our political system creates what seems to be so much short-term thinking, division, conflict, and this what we're seeing now is this kind of like almost bipolar pendulum swinging, which is swinging now at least every 4 years?
No, that's a fantastic question. And yes, there's a structural reason. Simply, it was designed that way. The framers of the Constitution, they had a tendency to design like our system of government based off of like human nature, right? They had a saying back then, ambition to counteract ambition. So they wanted to make sure that one person, like they understand human nature, it to be ambitious, to get power and to be in control and that kind of stuff, especially if you're more geared toward that like direction, right? And so they designed the system that it would be gridlocked. They designed a system that is forces compromise, that is forces people to work together and forces ambitious people who want to go to the top to reel it back a little bit and work together as much as possible. So the fact that you see all this political gridlock, it doesn't seem like anything happens or anything gets passed or anything gets done. In part, it's because it was designed that way. I also think another structural reason that I think simply it's just the nature of being a democracy, right? In democracy, you have many people that have keys to the so-called kingdom. I call it keys to the kingdom. Many people who have like different levels of power that they can pull. So even though you have the president and he might be the most powerful, he's not the most powerful by a wide margin, right? Because then you have the opposing party who acts as a check on his power. Then you have people in agency. And then you have donors that you owe political favors who donated to your campaign and they help you get into office. And every democracy to a certain extent had this problem. Well, every functioning democracy was like it's not like like a fake democracy, like every true democracy to a certain extent had this problem where there's like the gridlock. And that's because so many people have like different sources of power, and getting all those people to work together for one interest, it'd be very, very difficult.
Okay.
Now I could go into some spiritual problems, but we could talk about that. Trust me.
Oh my gosh!
But those are like the structural problems.
Yeah, very, very insightful, super insightful. So we've covered quite a bit about your experience in politics and what you've been seeing, and then now I'm sitting here talking to you, and you're an ordained monk. So there was some big jump there. Can you take us to how you ended up in this seat in your current ordination?
Yeah. So it's like I said, I think one of the issues that I found being in this ultra competitive and ultra like hyperactive, like crazy, busy environment is that no one ever paused. And I truly believe that there are so many times that if people just calm down, took a step back, sabai, even just a little bit, we could have got better decisions and better outcomes. But a lot of times what people don't understand is that even though these are very intelligent people that work on a lot of these issues, the world is a scary place. It's scary because it's unpredictable, and human beings have a desire to control what they can, or to have like some level of control. And when something happens and you don't have that control, it can be very scary. So you just do things, you just move to make sure that you can have, so you can just feel like you have control over something, right? So a lot of it was almost like just busy, just running around to make people feel like they're doing something about a problem that they have no control over. And so I remember a lot of times I'd be like, yo, like, let's just like take a step back and just chill. Like, let's think about the policy we're pursuing. Let's pause and let's reflect and let's figure out like, maybe like there's a better way forward. But like, no, it's like, no, like even people would oftentimes brag about how fast things moving and like how quick you could get things done and this and that. Like it was about speed. So definitely it rewards reactivity and it rewards speed over like thoughtfulness and reflection. And I think I kept seeing that over and over and over. And then also a lot of the issues, when you work in this space, like are morally ambiguous or like morally questionable.
Yeah.
And so I think because of that, I was like, no, like there's a better way to do something, right? And so I was just thinking that there's a better way to do this. And so I actually became a monk, not to hide or run away from the world, but to better understand it.
Wow. And what drew you to Thailand to become a monk? How did you find the program and the opportunity?
No, yeah, great question. Google.
Pretty simple nowadays.
Well, so because for me, I've meditated on and off for 10 years for a while, so I've had some familiarity and some understanding of a lot of these like spiritual concepts and a lot of like Dharma related concepts. And so I decided, I was getting burnt out. Because another thing I didn't mention about working in DC is it's also like hyper competitive. Like, and I think that's also part of the problem is like, I don't know if you've seen the TV series House of Cards.
I've seen like teasers of it and stuff, but never watched the series.
Well, no, it's a great series. It's really in depth in like how our political system works, but it's also one of those series where people are like constantly stabbing each other behind the backs and throwing each other under the bus and trying to get an advantage over somebody by making them look bad, and it was like that all the time. So it was almost like, even though you're working together and you're trying to like so-called fight against somebody else, you're also fighting people inside, right? So that became exhausting, and having to constantly like watch your back. Somebody might smile to your face and then throw you under the bus later, and it was just, that environment was just so exhausting. So I just, so I told myself, okay, well, once I'm done with the job, I just want to have like time where I could just slow down, pause, reflect, go inward, understand myself more. So that way I could maybe like hopefully understand the world better.
Yeah, incredible.
So I came to Monk Life. I Googled, ordination programs, in different countries like Indonesia and India, like all the typical South Asian countries, and Thailand just stuck to me the most. I actually saw Monk Life and I was like, oh, well, 30 days, like, what is this? I was like interested in it, and I was actually going to do it earlier, but then I talked to one of the Lumpies and he told me I had to cut my hair, and I wasn't trying to do all that at the time. So I was like, oh yeah, I'll do it later. And I just kept kicking it down the road. And then eventually, I had one really good meditation session with one of them, and then I signed up.
I'm sure we're going to kind of cut in one of those photos of you with longer hair, but yeah, that could be a big decision. And it's not just the hair, it's the eyebrows, right?
Yeah,
and the eyebrows take a long time to grow back,
because in a weird way your hair becomes, and I didn't realize it at the time, but your hair becomes your identity almost, right? I think it might be more true with like girls and like women, but even with men to a certain extent, your hair becomes your identity. And so I had grown out my hair because I've always been a little bit of a creative person, which DC is like total opposite of that. Right. So I definitely stood out wherever I went, but like I just wanted to like try something different and have like the hair and have like, they're called tree strand twists. They're not quite dreads, but we don't have to get into all that. And so I was growing it out for like 4 years, so it took a long time to grow, and and all of a sudden I had to cut it to become a monk, and I'm not even sure what a monk does. So why would I like do all that? Yeah.
So you've now, first off, I appreciate you coming into the city to record this, but before this, you've been living, or over the last almost 2 months, you've been living in a forest monastery outside of, or in northern Thailand. And you've been living and sleeping in a tent with basically no personal belongings. You've been reduced to 2 meals a day, both before 12 o'clock noon. And
19-hour fasting.
There you go. And
18, 19.
At least 4 hours of meditation every day. Lots of challenges, right? I've also noticed that when I went to visit you at the temple, I noticed you had at least 4 or 5 books I saw you with in like a single day. Like how many books did you read during that time?
Oh my goodness. Like when probably at least like maybe 25 to 30. It was maybe up to 30.
30 books in like 7 weeks.
But mind you,
when your schedule is already completely full.
So it's not like every book I read was like War and Peace with like 1,000 pages long. No, it wasn't like the Harry Potter. It wasn't, or like Lord of the Rings or Game of Thrones or whatever, right? It wasn't though. Some books were like 200-300 pages. Other ones might have been like 70 pages, 80 pages, where you could like read in a day or read in a couple hours. So it just depended.
So you're like speed reader.
Yeah.
I think you cleared out their entire library, because there's probably not more than like 30 individual. I don't know. Yeah, something. I'm pretty sure you read almost.
Well,
the whole
some
library.
of the books I read, they weren't like proper like novels or books that you could find on like Amazon. They're like books that maybe like the temple or like Dhammakaya like wrote themselves, and like one of them was all about Buddhist economics. I thought was kind of interesting.
Wow.
And apparently the biggest takeaway I took from that one, which I really, really appreciate, and it said this, that the Buddha was never against wealth, but he was against poverty. And I think I read that line and I'm like, yeah, like that's how I feel. Like, well, wealth is a good thing. Like you can use wealth for a lot of good in this world.
Sure.
But it's like if there's poverty, then that's be the suffering that we should be fighting against.
Yeah, definitely. And I think to a degree it's about the intention behind wealth. If you're just greedy just to grow your wealth, to hold more, to spend on yourself, that's a much different intention that I want to work actively to grow my wealth, to put to, charitable causes or to help others, right?
Yeah, exactly. And some of the books I read was about like how to raise the family, like from the Buddhist perspective. Like, there's all these like random books that I would never like the law, like a deep like dive and understanding of like the law of karma, which is just confused me more after I finished reading that book.
I read that book as well, and a couple of monks saw me reading it, and they're like, "Oh, you're getting into that." You're like, it's like one of the things I think the Buddha said not to talk about was the law of karma because it's so complicated that most people you could literally go crazy trying to dissect it and understand it with our brain, with our thinking brain.
Exactly, because I actually did look that up as well, and I believe that one of the things that the Buddha said was just not to speculate on it at all, because what matters is like here and now and what you're doing in this life.
Yeah, basically like just do good, get good, do bad, get bad, and like if you don't see it right away, just trust in the process. Yeah. So I wanted to ask, like, what's been the hardest part of the experience for you overall? Was there an individual thing that every day was difficult? I mean, you're still going, so it's not a past experience, but in hindsight, what's been the most difficult or the most challenging part that you've faced?
I think definitely when you sit in silence, and now that I sat in silence for so long, I better understand why no one wanted to do it at my job, right? Because when you sit in silence, like things come up about yourself, like a lot of uncomfortable truths, a lot of uncomfortable realities come up about yourself. And, because I think in most people's lives, and in my life, and I'm sure in yours and many other people's, I mean, think about situations that have happened to you. Like, you're the hero, the other person is the villain. Like, everybody's the hero of their own story. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So when you meditate and you go deep and you start understanding like your own like pain and your own trauma, you realize that, okay, well, maybe like that's not always true, right? Like maybe there are times where I've acted in inappropriate ways that triggered a reaction from somebody else, or you start realizing that, okay, well, maybe I thought I would dealt with this issue from a long time ago, but in actuality, it just manifests itself in different ways.
Yeah.
And so you start really understanding like your subconscious, and like similar to like Carl Jung and his philosophy, right? Is how your subconscious like actively controls and dictates your behavior when you're not even aware of it. And so I think that's why it's really important to sit in silence, to really understand who you are, so that you don't make actions and decisions without fully understanding like what you're doing, because your subconscious is like almost driving you in a certain direction.
Did you feel that as you started to sit more that maybe the discomfort or the thoughts or maybe the negativities or misconceptions about ourselves or the blaming game, did that start to dissipate, or do you still find it comes every time?
I think it comes up. That's a good question. I think maybe both, right? So it comes up every so often, and then sometimes you are able to redirect and tell yourself something like different, like you're able to change the storyline and tell yourself something more like positive, right? I think the best example I can give is one of my favorite monks, Tichahan. He had this idea of like suffering, right? So like in all of us, we have like these seeds. We have like this stored, like we have these seeds of suffering that have been implanted in us from a very young age. And so because they've been implanted in us for so long and we've been unaware of it, we've been watering those seeds over and over and over. And over time, it sprouts up and becomes like the big tree, right? So when you meditate and you're sitting in silence, you're essentially, it's like, if you were to have like insight and like different types of meditation, like vipassana, right? You're able to kind of go to those roots where those seeds like took plant, and you're able to like uproot some of those roots, and you're able to take new seeds of something more positive and plant those into the soil and water those. And so I think for meditation, that's kind of how that's had been my process, is being able to supplant those seeds that have been negative, like a fear, of ego, of pride, that kind of stuff, and maybe replace those seeds and plant like seeds of compassion, understanding, love, wisdom, and water those to make sure that those are what's taking root and growing up.
Yeah.
I remember like one of the monks told the whole story about the wolf, like which wolf you feed, like the positive wolf versus the negative wolf.
Sure.
The wolf that you feed is the one that's going to grow. And then in that video, it also talks about like, okay, well, just because even if you like stop growing the negative wolf and you grow the positive one, that doesn't mean that you should hate and be angry at the negative. Accept that it was there in the past and just allow it to be. but just make sure that you also turn your attention on like the positive wall.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Such a powerful lesson
Mm.
and application. It's like the proverbial angel and devil on the shoulder. Very
Yeah,
similar, right?
exactly. Yeah.
Analogy. You have gotten to spend now a lot of time with various monks living in the woods together, living at the forest temple. Many of the monks have been there for many years.
Mm.
So you've gotten to meet a variety of new monks and older monks. And I would imagine have you met monks prior to this experience? Like spent any time with them?
Yeah, just here and there.
Yeah.
I did another meditation retreat at another
Okay.
close by
Yeah.
monastery, but not like extensively. I think those are since I came to Thailand like earlier this year. I think that's been my experience working and dealing with monks.
Okay. And what might be a myth or misconception that you had going in to this experience about monks that now that you've gotten to spend time with some monks that have been there for many years and lived as a monk and living by the precepts, what's a myth or a misconception that you might that you had that has turned out to be?
I think you know what I'm gonna say. Yeah. The biggest myth I would have to say is that monks like are just people who are serious, super serious and don't have any fun. Like monks are some of the most funniest, fun, like exciting people like you could imagine, right? 'Cause if you really think about it, like the people who are the most happiest, the most peaceful, like they want to spread that joy. Like if laughter is the language of the soul, like amongst like soul speaks very loudly, right?
Yeah.
And so in like the monastery, like we're always like laughing and joking. Like I remember we built like a sauna, like a full on like sauna steam room out of like bamboo, right? So like you got the drills. So a monk apparently knew how to like construct stuff because maybe in his previous lay life he was a like construction worker. I don't know, but like he built a sauna. We built it together, like bamboo sticks. We have like insulation that wrap around, and then we got like this really big giant industrial rice cooker. And then we put water in it. It boiled. We closed the door. Then we put like herbs, like lemongrass, and just like herbs to make it smell really nice. And it just steamed up. And that was like who would think that a monk would construct a steam room in the forest monastery in Thailand? It just wouldn't happen, right? And then also like just all the constant jokes and the fun and the brotherhood in the community. I think sometimes like people, like monks are some of the most fun people on this planet.
Yeah, I love it.
Yeah.
You want to tell everyone how expensive it was to build that steam room?
A steam
that rice cooker steam room
that could fit like 10 people, like, and they're like seats, like we put like bamboo chairs. Anyway, I'm going down the I'm ranting or I'm rambling, but it costs 4,000 baht, which comes out to about $130.
Yeah, $130. And now it's so common, like especially I see this trend happening in the West, Australia, definitely the USA, like saunas are one of the hottest products. It's like all of a sudden it's like having a car. It's like every household needs a sauna in their backyard or side yard. And these things, like they start at like, I mean, you can definitely get them for a few grand, but really we're talking they start at like 5, 6, 7,000.
Yeah, exactly.
And I monastery, the monks there build it for
like $120, $30.
Right. Yeah. And it's like it's 8 people. It's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, very cool. Well, now you're 2 months in. What's been one of the biggest insights that you've taken in terms of life or
so
learnings?
many of them.
Yeah.
So many of them. So I'll say 2 that kind of come to mind. The first one is world peace through inner peace. I'm gonna say it again to make sure you heard me. World peace through inner peace. And I think this is a very powerful idea because a lot of times people have a tendency to want to focus externally. Like let's say you want to like make things better for the world or like maybe make a policy happen that you're really passionate about. You focus externally. Like you want to like that person needs to change, that system, that politician, that party, that country. They're the problem. They need to change. But no, in actuality, like when you have like true wisdom and true insight and understanding, you realize that it's you that needs to change to maybe be more accepting, more forgiving, more understanding, more compassionate. And so if you could achieve inner peace within yourself, then you're able to understand, you're able to understand that suffering, one, is universal, and the same things that cause you to suffer, the same, like we call them defilements, right? Like the ego and pride and like, competition and trauma, or like whatever, right? The same thing that cause you to suffer are the exact same things that cause other people to suffer. And so if you can overcome your own suffering, that gives you insight and wisdom to help you overcome this, to help other people overcome their suffering.
Mm-hmm.
And if each person focuses on themselves, gets the inner peace and the conflict within themselves, then they could help the world and the conflict externally. So world peace through inner peace.
All right, how about the second insight?
Second insight is, where there is perception, there is deception.
Mm-hmm.
So what that means is a lot of times we have situations in life, we have past experiences in life,
Mm-hmm.
and we look back and we reflect on those, and we have a certain point of view that had been shaped by our past, by our understanding, our history, our like trauma, that, you know, based off of who we are, that's how we view the world or a situation. But that's only one point of view. Somebody else might have another point of view, and another person, and another person, and another person. And so a lot of times when you only look at things through like that lens, you're only getting part of the truth.
Mm-hmm.
So just because you have one perception, that doesn't mean that that's the complete whole truth, right? It's like the truth relative to you, right? But there's something else that called like the full absolute truth, where being able to understand your own suffering and your own pain, you're able to see the pain and suffering of other people,
Mm-hmm.
entities, parties, institutions, whatever, right? And so you get like a more full holistic perspective.
Mm-hmm.
And so a lot of times I think probably most cases when you have a certain perception initially, then there's probably more to the story than you think or than you're telling yourself. So like, it's really important to have that understanding. So when you make decisions and you like interact with people, you get a full holistic perspective of the actual absolute truth of the situation rather than just the truth from your perspective.
Yeah, man, this is beautifully said. I really love listening to you talk. I have to say, I'm not trying to flatter you too much, Loki, but it's great.
You're far too kind.
Yeah.
Only because you're a great host, so you're bringing it
Oh,
out
I
of me.
appreciate it. I appreciate it. So now, after being 2 months, generally in isolation in the forest, you've been living with other monks, but very limited access to, say, society, limited access to your phone, throwing on maybe another few hundred hours of meditation to your previous experience. What do you feel is changed in you that you might be able to take away and apply to your future self, potentially even going back into politics?
I think what changed in me is I'm coming, I'm still a work in progress, of course, but I'm coming to a place where I'm truly seeking and even understanding my own suffering and the thing that is within me, right? And so now I don't look to, yes, Rumi has a quote. Yesterday I was clever, so I wanted to change the world, but today I am wise, so I want to change myself, right? And so I think that quote kind of like encapsulates kind of like what I'm experiencing,
Beautiful.
by going deep within myself and understanding like why I feel a certain type of way about seeing like this person speak, or this political party, or this drama, or this country, or this person, or whatever. Understanding why I feel that way about like situations in life, I'm able to, go deep, understand that, and then apply that same understanding to other people that I have issues with, and just kind of, it's creating like this like overwhelming like sense of just compassion for me, because again, like I said, we all deal with a lot of the same baseline instincts. Like we all want like hunger, like food, like thirst, right? We all deal with like some of the same like defilements, like pride, like lust, wanting to dominate, wanting to be right, that kind of stuff. And so the fact that I could see it in myself, I'm able to see it in other people. And so I like have compassion for them, because I know how hard it was for me to overcome that. And it's my desire that people can overcome that themselves as well. And so that's kind of like that. So maybe I start thinking, okay, well, instead of hating or casting blame on a certain person, I would rather like maybe figure out how I can engage them to help them. Because I know how difficult these things are, because these things like secretly and subtly control you.
That's beautiful. Compassion is such a beautiful word and a beautiful feeling. And, all of the teaching, even this experience that comes from compassion, right? The experience, the tradition, the legacy comes from compassion. It was really Buddha's decision after his enlightenment to say, no, I'm not going to just chill in bliss for the rest of my days. I'm going to walk for 45 years and teach. And that's all, that came purely out of compassion.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
it's
And
beautiful.
one thing I do want to say about Buddhism, because I think there's like a big misconception, it's not necessarily, and I know people have different views on this, so I totally understand,
Mm,
but I view it as not so much of a religion in the sense of like you're praying to like a higher power to come save you.
mm,
I view it as like like a way of life, right? Or like a system of like principles to like live your life by. So regardless of whatever religion you come from or background or country, or society, you can, apply a lot of Buddhist principles to your life
mhm.
and get so much out of it. So you could be Muslim and come ordained as a monk. You could be Christian and ordained as a monk. You could be Jewish, ordained as a monk,
Yep.
and so forth. And so because Buddhism is about like spreading these ideas and this like worldview to help people like end their suffering.
Yeah, I completely agree. It's so well stated, and it's so important, I think, to re-emphasize that
Mm,
it's really open and useful for everyone across
exactly.
every spectrum of life, rich and poor, uh, communist, capitalist, whatever. Like everything works, and we've seen it time and time again touch people. And I think, the past participants of iMonastery are perfectly tell that story from their various backgrounds of different countries, different religions, and different walks of life.
Yeah. One more insight I gained from monk life
Mhm.
is I learned more living as a monk in a monastery in rural Fort Chiang Mai about politics, international affairs, and geopolitics and government than I did in my 10 years of working in the US government.
Mm,
Again, it's like I said, the whole idea of world peace to inner peace, right? And so because I've done the work myself to understand my own suffering,
mhm,
and because we all have similar like baseline reasons for suffering, such as fear, ego, pride, that kind of stuff, like desire, attachments, I now can able to see that in other people. And so because I can see that in other people, I can see that in systems, in parties, in institutions, and in politicians, and
mhm,
in countries. So it's almost like because there's fear in me, or there is fear in me. I understand why, for example, Ukraine want to build closer ties to the West.
mhm,
And because they also fear in me, I understand why Russia wants to stop Ukraine from doing that.
mhm.
Because there's pride in me, I understand why America sees itself as like the beacon of democracy and pride and global hope all over the world.
Mhm.
Because there's a need for recognition in me, in myself, that I see in myself. I understand why a country like China, for example, wants to reestablish itself as the middle kingdom,
Mm.
at the center of global commerce and trade. And overall, like, because, like, for example, there's judgment in me. I understand why there's nationalist politics all over the world, even though I don't agree with it.
Mm.
I don't agree with, like, maybe certain types of nationalist movements, but I understand why it exists because the baseline, reasons for, like, the baseline, I guess, suffering points that exist
Mm.
in many of those, like, I guess, conflicts, I see them in myself. And so that's why I think it's really important to hammer the point home about world peace through inner peace,
Mm.
because if you can see and identify it in yourself and you learn how to like overcome that, then you can definitely help people overcome theirs. You can help system, government, politician, institution, and even nations overcome collective
Right,
suffering.
right. Beautifully said. Do you think you're ever going to return to BC? Washington, that is.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I have to, yeah.
So on that topic, one of the kind of cool, catchy words that was dropped into my peripheral from you this week
Mm.
was mindful governance. Can you talk to that a little bit?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I'm more than happy to. I'm glad you actually brought this up, because to me, mindful governance is basically my idea of how government could implement mindfulness and how government could be more mindful for the people that it serves. Right.
Mhm.
I think ultimately, government's role should be to create the necessary conditions. So backing up a little bit,
Mhm.
during my time in the monastery, I remember one of the senior monks, call him the Prajan.
Mhm.
He said that in the monastery that they create the most optimal conditions possible for anybody to come and go deeply and to meditate and to ordain.
Mhm.
I think government should focus the same way. So a mindful government would be a government that creates the best conditions and environment possible for people to end suffering
Mhm.
and not be the source of it.
Mhm.
Because many times I think you see governments, sometimes they can be the source of like, some of the suffering that people experience, and that shouldn't be the case.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, for a mindful government, they would try their best to create conditions for happiness and conditions to end suffering, that might mean different things, right? Like it might mean, maybe having a healthcare system that's beneficial to everybody, that so people don't have to worry about being sick, and they could, focus on like what they can do to end suffering without having to worry about like hospital bills, right? It might mean a government that knows when to not interfere in people's lives and not allow people to determine like whatever, the best way that they want to live their own life, right? But the fact is, a government that is attentive, that compassionate, and that's understanding of its people, and so that they know when to act and when not to act, and what bills and laws to pass, and what bills and laws not to pass, and that they're able to essentially help people by creating conditions that's optimal for them to end their suffering.
Oh, wonderfully. With a view that you might return back to Washington after some period, what ideas do you have to bring mindful governance back into politics?
So for me, I want to focus on what I like to call the 3 Ps: people, policies, and public services. 3 Ps, right? And so for me, I think it starts with the kind of people that we get into government. I think the kind of people that should be in government are people who are mindful, are people who are spiritual, are people who have done the inner work themselves. Because again, world peace through inner peace. How can you understand suffering of other people and then suffering in other people if you can't understand it in yourself? You have to understand it in yourself first. So I think the most mindful people of any society should be the politicians, the leaders, business, politics, should be the diplomats, should be, the negotiators. They should be the most mindful people, not just strategic, but they should be very mindful. So if you get the right people in there, so I want to maybe tell people who are in the spiritual community that it's okay to be in politics. Like don't say, because a lot of times they don't want to touch it because they're like, it's too corrupt, it's too dirty, we don't want nothing to do with it. Which I understand it, because it is corrupt, it is dirty, it is very difficult, and it is very taxing on you. But then I think we need you guys the most in those positions, because again, government, it's one of those foundational principles that affects everybody, right? So going back to like the basic unit of being of humans kind of gathering together, like humans, they get together in groups, and and they give up their part of their autonomy and their freedom to an overarching entity that is in turn provides a public good for everybody, right? And so it's important that that public good that's being provided for people, the people who are making those decisions are mindful, right? So getting the right people in office, elected office, politicians, working in the government, policymakers, civil servants, the right people. So I want to encourage those people to go into office and to go into politics in some capacity. Then from there, I think those people will be the ones to pass more like mindful policies, right? Because mindful policies would come from mindful people, right? And so mindful policy that address like the root causes of conflict, the root issues. Like to give you one example, we could take like let's say crime, for example, right? So somebody might commit a crime, and then society wants to judge that person, throw him or her in jail, throw him in prison, without looking at the conditions that were caused for him to commit that crime. Like, what role has society played for that person to commit that crime? Like, look at the educational system. Did he have any opportunity? Economics, with the family poor? Did he have a mother and father in the home? Like, there's so many other issues there that cause somebody to commit crime, right? So instead of only looking at that one person, look at the underlying root causes, and our policy should address that. You could almost think of any issue and you could break it down to something a lot deeper than like just the what's on the surface, like drugs, for example, right? The same thing. It's like, well, okay, if we're gonna talk about like this war on drugs, what are we talking about? Like our gun policy? Are we talking about, again, economic policy? Like what is the government doing or not doing to encourage drugs from being consumed, right? And so once we have policy that address the root causes of many of our issues, then public services or public goods, like we get the right people to implement those policies and those laws in a mindful way.
Lumpy, Kevin, this has been a lot of fun. How about 2 rapid fire questions before we break?
Let's do it.
All right. One that comes to mind would be, well, we've talked a lot about mindful governance. What would be one of the biggest obstacles to integrating this as a future vision?
I think one of the biggest challenges that I think people would say is people not believing in it. They might be like, oh yeah, this sounds nice, but just like a bunch of hooey spiritual stuff that's not actually practical, pragmatic, or implementable. I would wholeheartedly disagree with that assessment because, again, if you could implement it in your own life, then you can implement it in the lives of others, and you can implement it in policy and anything you do.
One piece of advice for young policymakers out there.
My piece of advice would be, don't be afraid to pause. Don't be afraid to stop and reflect on what you're doing. Don't be afraid to go against older, more established people who could potentially control your career, right? Just have some courage. If something that you believe is right, if there's a policy position you believe is right and it's been thought through thoroughly and it's mindful, go for it, and don't let anybody stop you.
I like going back to the beginning of this conversation. I like your technique of just going into the bathroom and sitting on the floor and meditating for 10 minutes
in the Pentagon bathroom,
throughout
in the White House bathroom.
Yeah, if you have any photos of that, please send them. just send us a photo of that bathroom so we can.
It was God. It was so like, sometimes people would walk in and be like, "What is this guy doing?"
Someone walked in on you. Oh my gosh.
So then what they started doing is, because in America they have these laws where you have to have like handicap accessible bathrooms, right? And so a lot of times those handicap accessible bathrooms, they're able to like completely lock, and you're able to have privacy. So I started going to those bathrooms.
Someone walks in and sees you sitting on the ground cross-legged, and they like open the door and they're like, close it. What did I just see?
Luckily,
trying to make sense of it.
Luckily at the Pentagon on any given day, like 30,000 people go into work. So most likely be somebody so most of the time it's somebody I didn't know. The one time it was somebody I knew, I decided, okay, let me just go get some privacy.
Well, this has been a lot of fun. Very insightful hearing from you all around your journey here, your political past in politics, your journey into ordination, your experience at iMonastery, and the future vision. Man, it's really delightful to see the integration of how this could be applied into politics, and I think even practically speaking, like there is definitely a movement in the Western world towards mindfulness, towards wellness, and I could totally see in the future that people in the U.S. will get want to pause from the pendulum swing and want to get a leader in that does have a serious spiritual practice, including mindfulness and meditation. So a future that I think we can all aspire for. Thanks for coming on. Best of luck in your future journey as a monk continuing on, and can't wait to follow your story from here on.
Thank you, Sam. It was a pleasure for having me, and happy to come back anytime. And Satu.
Okay.